Hey everybody, you are tuned in to Hanging with Here to Zen, the show that is a place for people who love all kinds of music. We really hope you enjoy your time with us today. Make sure you hit subscribe if you already haven't, and hit that notification bell to be kept up to date. We would love to hear from you over on our social media platforms, so just search Here to Zen and you'll find us. Lastly, could you leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify or Google Podcasts, or wherever you're going to be tuning in from? Those reviews help other people to find us, so we appreciate the reviews and the support. Thanks so much for tuning in.
How are you doing?
I am doing amazing. It's a new year and a shitload of gigs are coming to Australia, including you in April, so we can't be happier.
Right. Looking forward to coming back to Brisbane as well.
Well, you've just had a venue upgrade, which has got to be fantastic for the band to see it selling so well.
Yeah, well, I never take it for granted, to be honest, and I'm always happy that after so long, the novelty hasn't worn off completely.
Yeah, I understand. I need to start off with a really weird question. Does the term punk mean the same to you now as what it does back then?
Of course not. I did in '76. It meant quite a lot to me. I kind of identified with what was happening. I'm not sure about the rest of the band, but I certainly did. And then, as what happens with these kind of revolutions or whatever you want to call it, it became a new orthodoxy. And then, you have to subscribe to the new orthodoxy or else you are a heretic. And I just couldn't be taking any of that bullshit, because suddenly we had a keyboard, which we were really pleased to have. And then we started using synthesizers very early on, compared to most bands of our ilk. And suddenly that was considered sacrilegious. And then there was a bit of a, I don't know what you call it, a set two between us and other bands. We were for some reason, and none of the bands were signed up at the time, but we were chosen to support Patti Smith when she first came to Europe, over all the other bands who would have liked to have that slot. And then a few months later, we were asked to represent London when the Ramones came to the UK for the first time over all the other bands. So that put a few noses out of the joint. And then there was a bit of a handbags at 10 paces situation, and which was witnessed by a lot of bands, a lot of journalists, and it was the Stranglers versus everyone else from that moment on. Excuse me, I've just come out of a really bad cold for the last 2 days. It's much better now, but excuse me if I
No problem at all.
Splutter over the screen.
All good. Now, you talked about opening for the Ramones. It's funny that, I got into bands like the Ramones and stuff a lot later. I was that 80s kind of glam kid. And, I got to appreciate the simplicity of music far later on. It makes me sad now that I see that bands like the Ramones are more of a t-shirt brand than a band, and kids probably wouldn't have never heard one of their songs but wear their shirts. Does that bother you in that way, that music is seen more as a fashion brand now?
Music is considered in any form whatsoever, but music's always had an association with that kind of show busy thing, which is not from my generation's way of looking at things, But yeah, music's, to my way of thinking, music's reverted to what it was before in the early 60s, when it was part of show business, and then there was an alternative, which I kind of, as a 14, 15-year-old, sort of bought into, that you could it doesn't have to, don't have to talk about love, because if there was so much love in the world, it would be a happier world, you know. The term's been inflated.
Sure, yeah, it has.
But now everything's become a bit slick, a bit sterile, and a bit visual rather than audible.
Everything's way too accessible for my liking.
I'd be inclined to agree with you. It's got very commercialized.
Okay, so Dark Matters has been out almost 2 years. How are you feeling about the album almost 2 years on, and is there going to be new music soon?
Not soon. The way we work, not at the moment. As we're getting on, the quality control seems to have increased. I don't want to bring out stuff which I'm really not happy about, because it could be the last album we ever do. So I think I'd like to. I think others can do disposable stuff better than us now. I'd prefer not to be doing disposable stuff. I'd like to write about stuff which means something. I mean, without being pompous, you know, just that it has meaning, you know, because we are kind of conduits for what is happening around us in the world, whatever, you know, not only us, any artist is, you know. So, you know, we interpret the world as we see it or as we experience it, and it might not necessarily equate with how other people do or feel, but I think that's part of the job, I think. But also to hang it onto something which draws well, in our case, the listener in, you know.
Yeah.
So.
You speak about the artist being a conduit for the listener. Do you think that, I'm not going to speak about any sort of genres, but do you think that artists sometimes take that a bit to the extreme and don't realize the power they have?
I don't know if they don't realize the power they have. I think sometimes pretentiously they overinflate the power they have. But they do have an influence, of course. I'm of a generation who thinks that artists are vitally important. And mind you, this is part of my French background, you know, the art. I don't know if you've ever seen Red Asterix. No, okay. But the artist in olden times in France was, and still is, compared to the English, is considered bit of a conduit between man and God. So that can make you, if you're aware of that, it can make you pretentious.
Sure.
But, you know, I think you know, I have a vote. So therefore, I've heard politicians say musicians, pop stars, rock stars work with they don't know what they're talking about, so they shouldn't be involved in that. However, when you think about it, if you have the vote, you have an opinion. Mm-hmm. If you have an opinion, if you're an artist, you put that opinion into the way you look at the world.
Yep.
Surely. I mean, yeah. If you're going to say anything meaningful, then surely that's what you do. And you can couch it, and some smart people might get it, and others might just see it, take it literally.
Yeah, and the thing is, you can use your vote for good or for evil, no matter how you want to see it.
Exactly. So I think when a politician says, "Oh, you should mind your own business," you don't know what you're talking about. Excuse me.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Now,
however, it naive or ignorant I might sound to those people who claim to know what they're talking about, you know.
Well, I've always found that musicians, unless they're, let's just say, puppets, like a pop star, some pop stars are, where everything's done for them. I think musicians have the biggest, like, I don't know, connection to the ground and the regular people out there, because they can influence with one song, they can turn away with another.
I'd like to think that, yeah, that's where we're at on that question.
Yep. Now, for someone who's never seen the band before, how would you describe your show?
Well, I think it's high energy and emotional, and very sexy.
That's a really good way of getting those extra few tickets sold, I feel.
Don't take my word for it.
Be there. Now, I don't mean to scare you, but you are approaching your 50th anniversary of a band, as a band. Any special plans?
Yeah, we're going to celebrate that in the appropriate year, actually, well, which is next year.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, there aren't too many bands who can claim to have be celebrating their 50th. A few still doing it, but I don't know one who's. I mean, the Stones are still doing stuff, but they haven't done anything interesting since the 70s, you know. Whereas I lay claim to that the Stranglers still are edgy and interesting.
What does it take to be edgy for you?
To do the unexpected, to not be afraid to upset people, to not necessarily take the easy route out.
Yeah. So would you say that
If you can add to that?
Yeah, look, I'm always a fan of bands that don't paint by numbers. So generally when bands take a left turn and do something completely different, and people go, "Oh, that album sucks," it ends up being my favorite album. So
Yeah.
I like the
Yeah, well,
edgy
we've had that a few times with the Stranglers.
Yeah, I think if you stay in your lane too much, you always know your destination.
Well, this is, I was talking about this to someone yesterday. You know, we all want a bit of success. We all want a reward for the time we spend on something, but suddenly after struggling, you get a success. So what happens? You listen to the sirens to say, you got your success now, you've got your method, your formula, do it again.
Yep.
And that is when suddenly it's the tail wagging the dog and not the dog wagging the tail.
Yep.
We years ago, we had this experience. So we thought we were really clever. We wrote a song called Golden Brown. And the record company didn't want to release it. We insisted, and in the end, we had to use lawyers to invoke an article in our contract. So the record company eventually had to release it, but they decided to release it just before Christmas, with the tsunami of other releases which were being released before Christmas. And unfortunately for the record company, it developed its own legs and became a worldwide hit. So then after that, the record company said, "Oh, let's have another one."
Yeah.
So we gave them a 6-minute song in French.
And how was their reaction?
End of contract.
End of contract. We'll let you go now. Yeah.
But that was our choice. They, you know. So yeah.
An amazing fuck you. I quite enjoy it.
Yeah, very much so. And just the final nail in their coffin was a demo that they, amongst others, amongst about 24 other record companies, had rejected 5 years previously. We gave them that as our last donation, and that was a hit as well.
got to be gratifying to someone have the last laugh, surely.
Oops, yeah. Well, I think of our generation, we're the ones who have the last laugh.
And as I let you go this morning or this evening, how would you like to finish up today and let all your friends in Australia know what's going on?
Well, I hope you don't get flooded out in Queensland, because I know in the past you have had serious weather. And provided you're all fine, look forward to seeing you at the Tivoli. I really do.
And the Tivoli is a hell of a venue. It's my favourite venue in Brisbane.
I love it. We've played there a few times now.
Yeah, it's great. All right, JJ, I will.
Sorry about this.
That's right.
Take
I
care,
hope
Andrew.
you feel better soon, and I'll see you in
Oh,
April.
of course, yeah. I'm much better than I was 2 days ago.
That's
Look forward to
great.
meeting you.
See you, mate.
See you.
Bye.
Take care.